I want to start today by talking about how lying became acceptable in American politics. We've talked about George Santos over the last several weeks. We've seen the lies of so many Republicans in the context of the House Speaker fiasco, and it's just liars and liars and liars. And of course, we saw 4 years of Donald Trump and the amount of dishonesty that was there. It is unfortunately true that lying has become acceptable in the sense that it does not significantly damage a politician or candidate's chances of winning elected office. While it's generally understood like, oh, lying is bad, in some cultural sense, we still sort of look down at lying. Politicians regularly lie or mislead the public without really suffering significant consequences. And in fact, in some cases, politicians have been able to win elections after being caught in really, really bad lies. How did this come to be? One reason for this is that it's become easier for politicians to get away with lying because of the proliferation of news sources and the spread of misinformation on social media. It can actually be tougher for the average person who's busy working to sort through all of the information and determine what's true and what is not true, which means that politicians can make false statements and have them spread quickly, even if they're later debunked, and often avoid any consequences. The political climate is increasingly divisive and partisan, and politicians might feel pressure to lie in order to win or to advance their agendas. They may feel that the ends justify the means and that lying is a necessary part of the game. And it seems as though many voters agree with that. That same partisanship and polarization, I've talked about it before, is, we see ourselves as fighting a war here. And even if the battle is lost in the sense that we made stuff up, it's for the greater good of winning this war. And so when you have the politicians willing to do it and the voters unwilling to punish for it, you get what is essentially acceptable lying. It's important for citizens to hold politicians accountable for the things they say and the things they do, and to demand transparency and honesty. And it would be really difficult to completely eliminate lying in politics. But we have a situation right now where voters are as welcoming as ever of lies if they further what those voters already believe should be what our elected officials are doing. Many examples of pretty big lies in history, and we can talk about some of them. George H.W. Bush, remember the whole read my lips, no new taxes thing. During his 88 presidential campaign, he famously promised not going to raise taxes. In office, he signed a budget deal that included tax increases. His broken promise was criticized, but we could say the damage wasn't massive, even though he did lose, right? Ultimately, he did lose in 1992 to Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton then said, I did not have sexual relations with that woman. He did. It was just a straight up lie. And although it did lead to what we know, the investigation, the impeachment, all this different stuff, his approval rating really didn't suffer, and ultimately he got himself reelected. So another example, and again, I'm not passing value judgments on these. These are just examples of lying essentially being acceptable. Barack Obama, not everything Obama said worked out to be true. And Barack Obama said, if you like your health care plan, you can keep it. This was during the debate around the Affordable Care Act, known as Obamacare. Let's assume he meant it at the time or he wanted it to be true. There are people who lost their healthcare plans, even though they like them, because the new law made them invalid or non-compliant, I think would be the way to say it. And there was controversy around it. Republicans talked about it. Barack Obama was reelected in 2012. Now, there were so many other things going on. We can't simply say he lied about that and then got reelected. It's more complicated than that, but we're building up this picture. And then with Trump, it's quite literally thousands of lies, some big, some small. Just to pick a few different things, Trump's claims about voter fraud. In 2016, he said he actually won the popular vote. He didn't. In 2020, he said he won the election. He didn't. Major lie, absolutely huge lie. His supporters just bought it. They believe it. They aren't They didn't punish him for those obvious lies. Trump's obvious lies about the size of the inauguration crowd, Trump's claims about coronavirus, 15 cases will be zero, and, inject bleach, all this different stuff. Lies, dishonesty, etc. So at the end of the day, it's important for citizens to hold politicians accountable for their words and for their actions. And part of that has to be that it has to be unacceptable to the voters to have the level of lying and dishonesty that we have seen, particularly from more recent leaders. The missing link is as follows. Voters are more willing to overlook or excuse lies and dishonesty when politicians from their party are the ones telling the lies. And this can happen out of a sense of loyalty, out of a sense of, well, the other side is way, way, way worse. And in the highly partisan political climate that we have, voters are already tending to seek out information that supports their pre-existing beliefs. This is called confirmation bias. That leads to the spread of misinformation, and it leads to the acceptance, or at minimum, the indifference to misleading statements, overt lies, as long as they align with your political views. I try not to fall for this. And if I see something that the left is saying that doesn't make sense, I don't go with it. I know there's lots of people on the left who still say GMO food is bad just by virtue of being GMO. I don't see the facts backing that up. I don't see the studies and the science backing that up. So I don't repeat it, regardless of who it is that's on one side or the other side of the issue. It's a minor example, but it's an example. We should all be striving to do that. And until that changes, lying will continue to be a viable strategy in American politics. What ultimately happens with George Santos, where it's so extreme and cartoonish, we don't know. We will see. The science tells us that one of the best ways to get consistent deep sleep is lowering your core body temperature. When your body stays cooler at night, you're more comfortable and your sleep is better. Our sponsor, Sleep Me, is the home of Chili Sleep, the customizable, climate-controlled sleep solutions that can improve your sleep by keeping you cooler at night. There are 3 different Chili Sleep systems. There's the Ooler, the Cube, and the new Dock Pro with double the cooling power. All 3 systems are water-based, temperature-controlled mattress toppers that fit over your existing mattress to provide you with your ideal sleep temperature. You can go as cool as 55 degrees. You can go really hot if you want. I keep mine at 60, beautiful temperature for me. Don't wake up hot and sweaty. Chili Sleep keeps me asleep all night. It feels great. I didn't know it was possible to love sleeping even more than I already did. Go to sleep.me/Pacman to learn more and get 25% off your new Chili Sleep system. Click the link below to start staying cool at night.